Since 1946, Murphy's Builder Supply has been serving the folks of Jessup, Wayne, and surrounding counties with quality products and knowledgeable service. Matter of fact, they feel they sell service first to make sure you get exactly what you need for your home improvement projects. And with each employee at Murphy's being there for 10 years or more, you know you're talking with someone with the experience to help you with building supplies, tools, paint, and all the things you need from a full-service hardware store. The best choice in home improvement is Murphy's Builder Supply, 156 Northeast Broad Street, Jessup.
8 o'clock here at the Big Dog WIFO-FM. Time for the world-famous Butch and Bob Show, brought to you by Murphy Builder Supply.
Good morning, Jonathan. Good morning, everyone. Again, today on the world-famous Butch and Bob Show, we've got a special guest in studios with us, Mr. Keith Higgins, who's going to try to be on the ballot in November to run for district attorney. Keith, appreciate you coming here on the Butch and Bob Show.
Thank y'all for having me.
Met you at the Taste of Wayne. I've seen you in court over the years. I used to work at the DA's office. Is that correct?
I did. I've worked in the district attorney's office since February of 1988 when Glenn Thomas Jr. hired me on.
Tell us a little bit about yourself for people listening. Tell us who Keith Higgins is.
Well, I've been married for 38 years, lived in Glenn County for 32 years, raised 4 children there in the same house that we bought there. Active member of Community Church over on St. Simon's Island. Veteran of the United States Marine Corps, was an Eagle Scout, and was in the DA's office for about 23 years and now been in private practice about 10.
So after you left the DA's office, you just went into private practice for yourself?
I did. I opened up my own law practice there in Brunswick and been managing my own law firm since November of 2010.
Well, you're not on the ballot for the primary here, and you're not running as a Republican or a Democrat. So I guess that's the first question. Why did you get in the race early, just be on the ballot, have it over with June 9th?
Well, I'm running as an independent candidate, and the reason I am running as an independent candidate is because I don't believe the district attorney should be political. I believe the position should be apolitical. It should be nonpartisan. What a district attorney decides to do in a criminal case should not be influenced at all by political considerations. I'm also running as an independent candidate because I believe that everybody ought to have a voice in deciding who their district attorney is going to be. And that hasn't been the case in this judicial circuit since 1996.
But to do that, you have to get a certain amount of signatures. Is that correct? Tell us about that process. I know with the pandemic, they've extended the deadline. Tell us how many signatures you have to get and how that process works.
That's correct. To get on the November ballot for the general election, I have to get a total of 5,038 signatures. I've been advised I need to get about 25% more than that just to be safe, because invariably some of the signatures may not be counted as valid. So that takes it up to about 6,300. Started getting the signatures back on January the 16th, the first day that we're allowed to do that, and been doing that ever since. Of course, the coronavirus pandemic sort of shut us down in mid-March, and we just have started getting back up to do that. But we've got until August the 14th at noon to file those with the Secretary of State. We currently have roughly about 3,700 signatures, and I'm confident that we'll get enough signatures to be on the ballot in November.
So if you get enough signatures, you get your name on the ballot, it will be listed as Keith Higgins Independent. Is that how that would work?
That's correct. As I understand it, it'd be Keith Higgins. It may have IND period beside it for independent, and my name will be first on the ballot because I believe the names are in alphabetical order.
Well, tell us why you're running for district attorney.
Well, I'm running for district attorney because during the course of my career as a prosecuting attorney and defense attorney, I've seen injustices occur in the system from both sides, and I want to correct those injustices. It's time for a change, and I want to get in there and correct things and make things more fair and to everybody, especially victims.
Did we mention your thing this Saturday? We talk about signatures. You have to get signatures. You have an event this Saturday at the Bennett Union Church. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I appreciate you bringing that up. This Saturday, starting at 8 a.m., we're having a drive-through signing event at Bennett Union Missionary Baptist Church here in Jessup, Georgia, to help get those signatures. Appropriate social distancing and is going to be in place at that event. So I would ask everybody to come by, drive by, sign to help me get on the ballot so they can have a choice in November about who their district attorney is going to be.
And you say you live in Glenn County?
I do. I've lived there for 32 years.
So you familiar with the craziness going on down there right now?
I am familiar with that from the news media accounts as I think most everybody else may be as well.
Well, again, if you were the district attorney and you handled it all Malt Airbury, what would you do differently?
That's a very good question. it's difficult for me to answer what I would do differently because I'm not quite sure what was done. There's contradictory and conflicting statements out there about what actually was done by who and when. What I will say is this. If a district attorney has a conflict of interest, then the only thing they should do is to contact the Attorney General as soon as possible and have him assign another prosecutor to the case.
And apparently that's what was done here in this case. The original district attorney, Jackie Johnson, Glenn County, recused herself because of one of the accused, Gregory McMichael, had retired from her office only a year before. As was required, Attorney General Chris Carr approved the transfer to the Waycross Judicial District Attorney's Office, George Barnhill, who also recused himself, handing the case over to Tom Durden of the Atlantic Judicial Circuit, who ultimately decided to back away because of lack of staff and the fact that the case exploded onto the national scene. None of the three prosecutors, though, however, revealed the fact to Chris Carr that the Albury killing had been recorded. The Attorney General, Chris Carr, was asked under normal circumstances if he would have been shown the video when asked to approve the previous two transfers, and he answered no. The answer verbatim, again, this from Attorney General Chris Carr. He says, quote, "The way the conflicts works in Georgia is this. Some DAs will tell us what the conflict is at a very cursory level. Others will give us more details. They don't have to. It is incumbent on the DA or solicitor, either one, to say, I have a conflict. We can appoint another DA. We can keep the case ourselves. We can hire a competent lawyer. But that doesn't happen very often. Particularly speaking, you go to the next closest geographical DA or solicitor general because they are basically going to foot the bill to take the case. Some DAs come to us and say, hey, I've got this conflict. I spoke with so-and-so. They're willing to take it, and we sign it. It's just an administrative job. We don't take case files. We don't see evidence. We don't do any of that unless we take the case. Carr says he's approved 671 conflict appointments since taking the job of Attorney General back in 2016, but he adds this. What would be unusual, however, is if a district attorney, when they conflicted themselves out, had conversations with another district attorney to the extent of here's the outcome that needs to occur. The question remains, did that happen in this instance between Jackie Johnson and Barnhill? Two Glenn County commissioners say Johnson told police not to make an arrest after the shooting, but we had Jackie Johnson on this show, and she called that a flat-out lie. Barnhill, however, issued a detailed letter exonerating Greg McMichael and his son, Travis, on April 3rd, even as the district attorney had concluded he had a conflict of interest in the case. Carr says that's what we are investigating, so he cannot comment on the fact the National District Attorney Association have ever sent out a statement taking the issue with Barnhill's letter saying on prosecution, no prosecutor should inject his or her opinion into a pending case to the point where she or he becomes a potential witness and risks compromising the just outcome of a case. So that seems to be the big issue, is why would Barnhill make a legal opinion on a case? Can you explain that to us?
I can't explain why somebody else does something, but I will say that if a district attorney has a conflict of interest, that means that there is something in the case that causes a question about whether or not they can be fair and impartial. And at that point, they should do absolutely nothing in the case. Other than that, to whatever extent anyone did anything more than that, that would have been inappropriate.
I understand the officers are being investigated. I mean, you've been, like I said, you've been a DA's office. You're also a prosecutor. You know, you've been in legal. How long you been an attorney?
I've been an attorney about 34 years.
And so you've been so you've been in cases. You know, you've been watching cases, and as long as I have, for the life of me, I can't understand how these officers aren't being held to account. Why aren't they fired already? I mean, they show up on the scene. They've got a video. And they just say, "Oh, we're going home." You know, it's a self-defense. I mean, why aren't they under scrutiny?
I'm reluctant to talk about the specifics of the case and how it was handled because I don't have all the facts, and so I'm reluctant to do that. My reluctance also comes from the fact, Bob, that I, out of concern for Ahmaud Arbery and his family, that I don't want them to feel as if I'm trying to politicize their pain. And so I don't feel it's appropriate for me to interject myself into that case or how it was handled or whether or not it was mishandled.
So you don't have any comment on how it was handled? So you just don't want to comment on that case at all?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Bob, but yeah, I don't want to comment on that at all because I don't think, like I said, I don't want Ahmad's family to feel and friends to feel as if I'm trying to politicize their pain, and I don't think that would be appropriate for me to do. That matter, certain aspects of that matter are being investigated by both the GBI and the Department of Justice. At some point, we'll know what those facts are.
And it's being investigated by the federal government right now. I mean, the Attorney General is asked for assistance. I mean, it's a full-fledged investigation to find out what happened from start to finish. So it'll be interesting. Okay, so we'll move on. Again, you're in studio to tell people that you're running for DA. What else do you want them to know? What else, I mean, you're running against an incumbent, so,
Well, I decided to run back in August of last year, long before any of the current circumstances existed, and I decided to run because of things that I had seen take place in the justice system over the last 10 years that I felt were wrong, that I felt were unjust, and that I wanted to run to change those things.
And what are some of those things? Can you give specifics?
Well, the in terms of the things that I saw were wrong is that there's been a lack of fairness, a lack of equal treatment, a lack of consideration for victims and their families, and I want to put that into place in the district attorney's office. There is a delay in the resolution of cases through trials. Cases are pending too long, and I want to address that as part of being district attorney as well, and to affect positive change in the system so that justice will not be delayed and therefore denied.
As you mentioned, you've been a resident of Glenn County for a long time, so you've seen all these cases that have come through. There's been scrutiny on a lot of cases going all the way back to the Carolyn Small case. Where do you fall on that? How do you think that was handled?
It was totally handled inappropriately. I spoke out publicly back then. This isn't just me coming to the table now trying as part of a political campaign to address that. I spoke out publicly about that when it happened several years ago.
And explain to the people listening, they may not be familiar with the case, the Carolyn Small case. This happened back in, say, 2000, is that correct?
Carolyn Small was killed in the summer of 2010.
2010.
As best I can recall, Jackie Johnson was appointed to be district attorney in August of that year. The case was not actually presented to a grand jury until sometime in 2012. At the time that case was presented to the grand jury, it was not presented in a way that it should have been. Defense counsel was allowed to participate in the proceedings. There was an inaccurate and misleading animation that was presented to the grand jury. And the family of Caroline Small was not even notified that the case was being presented.
Yeah, for people maybe not be familiar with the case, this was a lady, she was disoriented. She was being chased by Glenn County Police. I'm sure what department it was. But anyway, there was a 20-minute chase. They had her spun out. They shut off the tires. I mean, she was basically driving on the rims. And she eventually wound up backed up in an alley near the Glen Place Mall where she was surrounded. And they were trying to get her out. But like I said, she just didn't respond. And they wound up firing like 6 or 7 bullets through the windshield. And people that saw the video said it was tough to watch. But, again, those officers never were held accountable either. But both those officers are dead, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. They are since deceased. Officer Corey Sasser.
AJC's made a big issue of this case. Yeah. I mean, Channel 5, I think, in Atlanta has done a big expose. I know AJC had a big, I mean, that's been something that people talked about for years since the case took place.
Yes, the Channel 2 in Atlanta, WSB television, Channel 2, as well as the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, did an investigation into that, and during the course of that, I spoke out and against the handling of the case back then.
And as you mentioned, Officer Sasser is one of the officers involved, and then he got involved in another, I think that was like in 2018, where he got out, shot his estranged wife, shot himself. Explain that. How do you think that was handled?
Well, I once again feel that was not handled appropriately, and in that a bond was agreed to. by the district attorney in that case, even though they had a conflict of interest. And the same day that they agreed to a bond, they sent a letter to the Attorney General telling the Attorney General they were recusing themselves from the case and asking for another attorney to be appointed. So they participated in a case, agreed to a bond, even though they had a conflict of interest.
So again, explain the politics. That's what I keep hearing. There's just a political football down there in Glenn County between the departments. That's one of the reasons why the GBI wasn't called in, because the current police chief's under indictment, several officers are under indictment. Is it as bad as we hear? You live down there. You've got a better understanding of the system than we do.
Sure. Well, my involvement in the case, in any case right now, is if a case is made and it's brought, and I happen to be representing the individual in that particular case. In terms of the interactions of the district attorney's office and the police department, I don't have any knowledge about how bad that is or how good that is. It's not a good working relationship right now, to say the least. That's probably an understatement. How that came about and why, I really don't know. But it's not a good working relationship right now for some reason.
Well, like I said, you spoke publicly about the small case. Didn't think that was handled correctly. You spoke publicly about the Sasser case. You don't think that was handled. That's why I asked you, you think the Auberry case was handled properly? I mean, you say you don't want to comment on it, but you're running for district attorney. So the curious question is, if you were the district attorney, how would you have handled the case? What do you think was handled differently?
Well, I can't answer differently because that is currently under investigation, and I don't have all the facts. The GBI is investigating how it was handled. The Department of Justice is investigating how it was handled. And so when I have all the facts, I'll have an opinion. With regard to the other matters, I have an opinion because I'm aware of what actually happened in those cases and how they were handled. I have actual knowledge of those. So with regard to the Ahmaud Arbery case, how I would have handled that, with a conflict of interest in the case, I would have not given any advice to the police. I would not have referred it to George Barnhill. I would have contacted the Attorney General as soon as possible and had him appoint someone to the case.
Well, isn't that what took place? I mean, how does that work? I mean, she recused herself, and did she appoint Barnhill, or I thought the Attorney General was the one that signed off on Barnhill?
Once again, I don't know. We have press releases and statements coming from the district attorney's office. We have opposing and contradictory statements coming from the Glenn County Commissioner in terms of what the truth of that is. That's what the GBI and the Department of Justice is looking into. I mean, I'm not commenting upon what actually happened or whether or not anybody did something they shouldn't have done. All I can address is what I would have done under those circumstances.
Well, the GBI in their press conference last week said that their investigation is just about complete. But like I said, they've been asked by the Attorney General to investigate everything, how the thing was handled from day one. So it's going to be interesting how it plays out. It's curious to me what it appears that the law enforcement had the video day one, right? When they show up on the scene, the report is that Roddy Bryan guy showed them the video and said, "Here's the video," and they still let him walk on. I mean, that's what boggles my mind. That's why I don't understand why we're not starting with the police officers. Why aren't they held accountable? What are you thinking? You can hold somebody for 72 hours without charging them. Isn't that correct?
Correct. You can take somebody into custody and hold them for 72 hours until you get a warrant for their arrest.
We even know if they took them down to question them, from what the reports are, they just let them walk from the scene.
Like I said, all I know about the case is what I've read in the newspaper, and as an attorney, I never form an opinion based upon what's reported in the media. No offense intended. I want to look at the facts. I want to look at the evidence. I want to know what actually happened, what happened when, and who did what. We know that they weren't arrested that day.
Right,
that's
exactly,
obvious.
Right. But the other thing that bothers me, too, where was the outrage after the shooting? Why did it take the video 2 months later before? I mean, where was the protest then? Where was the Black Panthers then? Where was the NAACP then? Where's the family then? Why weren't they yelling and screaming, they killed an innocent man in the middle of the street? They won. Why did it take 2 months for the video to come out before all the public outrage?
Well, you
live in Brunswick. Why wasn't anybody? Was there any talk about what happened and why there wasn't anybody protesting at the time it took place?
There wasn't, because the initial report that was published in the Brunswick News essentially was that somebody committing a burglary was shot by an individual. and that was the extent of it. The exact facts and nature of what transpired and whether or not that was accurate or not, was not yet known.
So just everybody bought that story from day one.
That was the only story that was out there.
Including the family. I saw the mother go on The View, and Whoopi Goldberg asked her point blank, what did the police tell you when you first got to your house? And she said the same thing, that they told me my son was involved in a burglary, got in a tussle with the man with the gun, they shot and killed him. Second question was, did you believe it? She said, yeah, I did. So, that's what boggles my mind. It took a video 2 months later for all this craziness to take place.
Because the way it was initially reported did not reveal what was shown in that video. It was contradictory or inconsistent with what the video actually showed. And so even the mother, as you mentioned.
Right, so everybody just took that story hook, line, and sinker, that's what took place. The kid was involved in a burglary, got involved in a tussle with the gun, got shot and killed, so case closed. And then it takes the video 2 months later, and then people actually see what did take place. And then, like I said, there's a full-fledged investigation. GBI comes down, and within 2 days, they've got 2 people charged, and then a week later, they got the third guy charged. So, it's going to be interesting how it all plays out. Like I said, a video doesn't dictate the outcome. That's why they have courts of laws. That's why they have trials. So we'll see how it all plays out. But it'll be interesting. I was just curious. Like I said, you were critical of how other cases were handled. I just didn't know if you had any criticism on how this case was handled by the DA's office. That's all. You're running for DA, so I'm just curious if you have any criticism.
Sure. The other cases that I have criticism of is because I know what happened in those cases and I know the facts of that. With regard to the Ahmaud Arbery shooting case, all of those facts are not known.
Okay, that's fine. I can go with that. I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you have anything.
I appreciate that.
So, again, you're running for district attorney. You got to get the signatures. You got an event this Saturday. Any other events to get the signatures, or how do you do it? Like I said, we talked to the sheriff candidates. With this pandemic, it's tough to get around. The district you're running is pretty wide. You got Wayne, Glenn, Appling, Jeff Davis, and Camden. So it's a pretty wide circuit. So, but like I said, you're familiar with the circuit because you practiced law in this circuit for quite some time. But how do you get around it? How is that going?
Well, it's going well. Obviously, we can't go door to door. That would not be appropriate, respecting other people's health at this point in time. So we're having the drive-through signing this Saturday at Bennett Union Missionary Baptist Church here in Jessup, starting at 8 o'clock. We're having a table at a fish fry and car wash fundraiser that's being put on by Wheeler Street Church of God down in St. Mary's on Saturday as well, that starts at 9 o'clock. We're going to have a table again at First Friday in Brunswick on June the 5th. We're going to look at getting up into Hazelhurst to have a table at the food truck event that they're having up there at the Big House on June the 5th as well. And so we're basically trying to make ourselves available for people to come to us and sign under circumstances in which they feel safe and comfortable to do so. We also have petitions out at various businesses where people can drop by and sign there. We have some petitions up here in Jessup at Gilead Ministry Center on North Macon Street, for example. We have them at various businesses down in Glenn County, Caldwell Banker, Main Street Frame Shop, Daddy Kate's Coffees, Gold Coast Nutrition. So we're putting it into business locations and also setting up signature events at locations in the various counties to have people come by. We just had one last week in front of O'Reilly Auto Parts up in Baxley, where we had a table there as well, and we're going to be getting up into Hazelhurst as well as soon as we can to do the same thing.
He's just joining us. Keith Higgins is in the studio. He's running for district attorney, but he has to get a number of signatures. I'm curious, once you get the signatures, where do you take the signatures? Who are putting this? Is it like the recall? the writing candidates where the probate judge had to confirm that all the signatures are legit. So where do you take your signatures for somebody to verify this is a registered voter and it's legit and all that stuff?
Sure. Well, we're asking everybody that's out there. Individuals actually are getting signatures as well, but we're asking for all the signature pages to be turned into the campaign no later than July 31st. We have to bind all the sheets together into a single document after we get them, and then present them to the Secretary of State's office by noon on August the 14th. What will then happen is the Secretary of State will basically take out the sheets for Wayne County and send them to the Wayne County Board of Elections, and send the various sheets out to their respective Board of Elections. And then the county boards of election will then go through the sheets for their counties to verify the signatures that are there.
So each county in the circuit will verify whether they're legit or not.
That's correct.
And then once you get verification, then you're automatically put on the agenda. On the ballot in November, or how's that work?
If a sufficient number of signatures are verified or considered to be valid that are presented to the Secretary of State, then I will be on the ballot for the general election on November 3.
Well, the good thing about November, it'll be a huge turnout, with the presidential race and things like that. So it should, there's a good turnout here in Wayne County already with the sheriff's race taking place. So again, I'm sure you want to encourage everybody like we do to please get out and vote. It's amazing to me how many people don't take the opportunity to do their civic duty or do what people fought and died for, our right to vote. But unfortunately, many people don't take that opportunity. So I know you want to be like us and just encourage everybody to please get out and vote.
Absolutely. The most patriotic thing that anyone can do is to vote. And the most patriotic thing of all is to vote when you have a choice.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming in. We wish you the best of luck again. Remind people again about the signing this Saturday at Bennett Union Church, the time and what they need to do.
Well, we're starting at 8 a.m. Going to go till 4 p.m. I'm going to be there from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you have any questions of me, I'll be there to address those. So you just need to drive over to Bennett Union Missionary Baptist Church, and we'll have the petitions there. Bring your own pen if you can for your own safety to use that. We'll have pens there if you need it. Sign the petition, and then you drive off.
Just curious, will you be wearing a mask? Are you one of those people that want to wear a mask?
I have been wearing a mask when I am around other people in public. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a tough thing for me to do. I'm not a mask person. When I go to certain places, I have one, but it's tough for me to wear a mask anyway. But I'm sure we'll see you now between now and November. We appreciate you coming in to introduce yourself to our listening audience, and we'll follow the campaign. And like I said, follow the election. Like I said, I'm sure we'll have you back in between now and November is when you get on that ballot. So that's the goal right now, is to get on the ballot. But to run as an independent. Explain once again, I thought that was an interesting answer. I said, why not just be on the ballot as a Democrat? Explain again why you want to run as an independent.
Well, I'm running as an independent for two reasons. Number one, I believe the district attorney should be apolitical. It should be a nonpartisan position. Political considerations should have absolutely no effect upon what a district attorney decides to do in a criminal case. The second reason I'm running as an independent is because I believe that everyone should have a voice in deciding who their district attorney is going to be. And there has not been a contested race in the general election to select a district attorney since 1996.
Okay. Again, if you've been listening, this is Keith Higgins running for district attorney. Needs 5,000 signatures to get on the ballot in November, but I'm sure that'll be a task you'll be able to undertake. Like I said, you're halfway there, right? Or more than halfway, right? How many signatures do you have already?
We have about 3,700, looking at getting a minimum of 6,300 to get that 25% more, just to have a buffer there, or a safety net, if you will. And so, yes, we're more than halfway there, and I'm confident we'll get that and even more. Like I told you before we went on the air, I'm following the statement that the coach gave in Remember the Titans, leave no doubt.
Right. Well, I said you've been around a long time. You have people in all these counties helping you with your campaign. I mean, have you got that set up?
We've got people in all of the counties helping out. I've gotten signature from all 5 counties. Getting into all 5 counties, we haven't made it up to Hazelhurst yet. Haven't made it up to Jeff Davis yet, but we are working on getting up there as well to have a signing event there very soon. Okay.
Well, again, we appreciate you coming in. Like I said, we'll see you between now and November, and we'll have you in again once you get those signatures, get on the ballot. We'll have you in another time and talk more about why you want to be district attorney.
Well, thank you very much, Bob.
Appreciate you coming in. Again, that's going to do it for today's World Famous Butch and Bob Show. Reminder, tomorrow we're going to have a special guest by telephone. Tommy Palmer is going to join us, and it'll be fun talking about him, about his shows that have been on the air for years. Jonathan, Countdown to Kickoff,
that's
the
right.
High School Scoreboard Show. But I talked to him yesterday. He's looking forward to being on the show. So I know there's a lot of Tommy Palmer fans out there. You might want to tune in tomorrow from 8 to 8:30. Special guest Tommy Palmer on the world famous Butch and Bob Show. That's going to do it for Thursday. Again, everybody have a great day.
All right, world famous Butch and Bob Show on WIFO, brought to you by Murphy Builder Supply. 8:29. Good morning from the Big Dog, WIFO FM.